I'm sure we've all seen that type of fishing rod review where someone's so excited to try out their brand new fishing toy that they go out there, fish once, film once, and make an in-depth review. Well, I don't believe in that. I think it takes a long time to really get to know the ins and outs of a product. Well, today we are going to be talking about the Toadfish fishing rod and reel combos. I have fished this rod and reel for the last 2 years. Those of you that watch my actual fishing videos know that this features basically every time I'm saltwater fishing, and I'll tell you why. I'll make this easy. 2 pros, 2 cons in this video, and then one thing that I think Toadfish markets that I don't really care about. So let's get into it and let's talk about this rod. These 2 rods here are Toadfish rods. They're the 7-foot 2-inch medium heavy 2-piece rods, and one has the actual Toadfish rod and reel combo on it. This is the reel, the 4,000 size, and then this one is the Daiwa BG, also a 4,000 size. So I've also got a travel rod that I've taken fishing in Hawaii as well as California, and when I was in California I was crabbing, I was snaring Dungeness crab, and what that happens and what that entails is using a 7-ounce snare. You're tossing it off a pier. I do it underhand because technically this rod is only rated for like a 1-ounce lure, but I'm using 7 ounces. But I underhand it, throw it out, and not only does it have enough power to reel and set that snare for a big ass Dungeness crab, but it also has enough backbone to bring that snare back up over the pier. And sometimes you catch multiple crabs at the same time. So very, very powerful rod. This is that first pro that I'm talking about. Even though this is a light tackle rod, man, does it have a nice backbone, and it bends really, really well. When I'm using this rod, I'm usually throwing something like a gotcha plug, which is 1 ounce in weight. And the best thing about this rod is that it loads enough so that when you cast out, it has enough of that spring that sends that gotcha plug million miles away, okay? But at the same time, that tip is strong enough and won't move as much that when you're working it back, and usually, you know, in my other videos I show you, but you're working a gotcha plug like this, but you're pointing it down and you're moving it back like this. And what you really need is a rod tip that is fast action, and that's what this medium heavy version has. It translates to a very nice walk the dog action for that gotcha plug. Now, I don't want you to disregard that for any reason, because when that line is so far out there, you casted your lure so far out there, movements like this needs to be strong enough so that that action can translate when you've got all this line out, and especially if you're using monofilament, it's essentially like tugging on a rubber band. So you need a rod tip that is fast enough and strong enough to translate that jerking motion that you're doing to the actual end of your lure and make it do the actual work and the lure action that it's supposed to do. Let's talk about pro number 2, which is how lightweight this rod actually is. Like, with the reel itself, this reel is one of the most lightest reel that I've ever felt in my hand before. And I have no problem just holding this and just working the gotcha plug all day. Now, when you're casting and retrieving all day, your wrists hurt, your fingers hurt, and with the Toadfish rod, like, if my fingers hurt on another rod, I'll just go to a Toadfish because I know it's going to be really light and really easy for me to work this rod. So again, pro number 2, how lightweight for how strong it is. Like, I really like this combo. What can I say? I just really like this combo. All right, on to the cons. And Toadfish, if you're watching this, like, I found this out after 2 years of owning your rod. First thing is these keying guides, for some reason, you know, I wash this every time I go to the saltwater. I take really good care of these rods because they're so good looking and I really like them. I use them all the time. But what I've found is that the guides can sometimes have their outer covering or their outer layer flake off. Now, it doesn't rust, but I can also see the flake off. I see some people talk about rusting guides, and I've never had that happen. I've washed these well, so I'm just saying, like, I don't know why, but sometimes the outer bits can flake off. What can I say? It just happens to my rod. Now, with a 2-piece, another thing that you have to think about is the connection here. Now I know how you're supposed to put this on, right? You push it down and then you twist it into position so the guides will align. Well, after a long day of casting at the beach, I'm casting all the time. For some reason, the top half tends to fly off if you're not careful. So that could be another con. I think of the 2 years that I've done this, like it's probably flew off like 3 times, okay? So not a lot, but still it happens. And I think, to be honest, a lot of 2-piece rods will have that problem. So if you're looking for a Toadfish rod and you like it, and obviously I like it enough to keep using it, get a 1-piece if you can. If it fits in the car, get that 1-piece. Don't get the 2-piece. It's just, to me, it's not worth it. All right, let's work on con number 2, which is the reel itself. If you're limited and strapped for cash, just get the rod, okay? Like, you don't really need this reel unless you want like another reel. So if you got one lying around that you can pair with this rod, just get the rod itself. Don't bother with the reel, because look, listen, first time I took this thing to the beach, it was a brand new rod 2 years ago, and I was fishing, saltwater fishing. When I left a pier, I washed it with some fresh water, kept it in my room, and then the next day I went back out onto the pier and this thing started squeaking so bad, like SpongeBob's squeaky shoes. Remember that episode from SpongeBob, the squeaky shoe one, where we're all walking on the ceiling? Yeah, I just started squeaking. And I promise you, like, you don't want to be listening to that all day, because honestly, the other pier fishermen make fun of you, man. It's just not fun. So after I came back, I had to take this apart and then basically grease everything again. Remember, this was a new reel, so grease everything again. It hasn't happened again in the next 2 years, but essentially I feel like I just got something that wasn't greased up enough. And the last thing I want you to see is when I turn this, okay, there's a lot of exposed metal here. You guys see that? It's a lot of like silvery exposed metal. Well, if you're planning on wade fishing, then maybe this reel might not be the best for you. Get something like a Daiwa BG. Yes, it's more expensive. These guys are not in the same price range in terms of reels, but the Daiwa BG is a little heavier. It also has more line capacity, and it is a lot more covered than this 4000 Toadfish reel. Lastly, I want to talk about this feature that is always marketed, but to me doesn't really carry that much weight when I'm trying to decide if this rod is right for me, and that is this little thing right here. That is the hidden hook keeper. And I'll take off this rod to show you what I mean. It is right here. It's that little groove at the top here, and that is the hidden hook keeper. To me, I basically just use this normal hook keeper here, and I'll tell you why. If you're a saltwater fisherman, chances are you've got some sort of treble hook lure. So hooking that onto the hook keeper, you could see where the problem is, right? If you're holding this and you're hiking this somewhere, well, you're just gonna get a fistful of treble hooks. So there's really no reason for you to ever use this hidden hook keeper unless you were just shoving it on your boat or putting it onto your pier cart and just transporting it that way. And at that point, might as well just use this, right? There's just no reason why you need to do this hidden hook keeper. So in my personal opinion, I don't really care if I have a hidden hook keeper. It's not really useful for me. 10 out of 10 times, I'm using just this normal hook keeper. So I hope this has given you some idea of what a Toadfish rod feels like. And again, incredibly light. It feels like an extension of my hand. I can cast where I want. It's super, super accurate. I don't get any wind knots with it. And overall, this is why I fish this rod probably 80–90% of the videos that I'm making when I'm at the beach, because I just love this rod so much and it works really well for the type of fishing that I like to do. Anyways, I hope you found this helpful. Let me know in the description if you've ever tried one of these rods and what you think about it, pros, cons. I want to hear about it, because that is going to help the other people who watch this rod review video make the most informed decision. I'll see you on the next adventure, and until then, tight lines. When I'm throwing this rod, and when I'm throwing this lure,